Local history, local culture, local events, your community. This is the Joe Kelly Show.
And welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Frank Tomaino is our guest. Frank is our go-to guy for local history. Frank is the author of History Just for the Fun of It. He continues to write his column for the Observer-Dispatch, which appears every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
And I read it on Saturday online. It goes on a day early online. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, but before we do that, we're going to say, well, good to see you again.
Great to be here, Joe.
We're going to talk a little bit about baseball, and this is Cooperstown, of course, and we had the Utica Blue Sox. We had a team before the Utica Blue Sox. We'll talk all about that. But first, last week I had Brad Velarde on the show from Greater Utica Magazine, and we happened to touch on something which you might know the answer to. I didn't know the answer to it. Brad didn't know. Loom to boom. We got talking about that a little bit and how we went from the knitting mills to Chicago Pneumatic and GE and Bendix and all that. Neither one of us knew that phrase. Where did that phrase come from?
Loom to boom?
Yeah.
One time I interviewed Dr. Virgil Crisafulli. He was a professor of economics at Utica College, one of the founders of Utica College, which is now celebrating its 75th anniversary, by the way.
You're an alum.
Yep, 1961. And we were talking about the loom to boom era because he had written quite a bit about it. And I asked him, I said, you know, who coined that phrase? He told me that it was Carl Spitzer. Carl Spitzer was, I remember I interviewed him a couple of times. He was PR man for Bendix Aviation. And I think he had a small public relations firm himself. And he left the area later, but he was here when Bendix came here, 47, 48. And Dr. Crisafulli told me it was Carl Spitzer who came up with the phrase, the loom to boom.
Yeah, very appropriate when you think about it.
Oh, it was great, the loom, the knitting mills, the looms and the knitting mills. And then when Bendix came, Chicago Pneumatic came before Bendix. And of course, GE had been here. So all of a sudden, the knitting mills were gone. It left behind a, I hate to say it, but an uneducated workforce. Mm-hmm. There was no college in Utica, nothing. Usually you graduated from high school, you went to work in the knitting mill or whatever. And all of a sudden, not only these industries came in, like Bendix and GE and Chicago Pneumatic, but Utica College and the New York State School of Applied Arts and Sciences, which is today MVCC, both got started in 46. So everything was happening in 45, 46, 47. You not only had great baseball teams, but...
yeah, which we're going to get to in just a second.
Yeah.
I know that Utica College got started. In fact, I think you were up there on Oneida Square, in buildings up on Oneida Square, correct?
I graduated in 61. We were the last class to graduate from Oneida Square. They went to Burstone Road in 62.
And if anybody would be driving through Oneida Square in those days, boy, they'd see a lot of college kids out on the church, by the church there. That was one of the buildings.
Thank God for Plymouth Church. When Syracuse University in 46 said they wanted to open a branch college in Utica, where are we going to put the college? And it was the parishioners of Plymouth Church who agreed to rent-free give the college their church house. Mm. I took many classes at the church house, so it was on Oneida Square in that area.
Yeah, and they took in a couple other buildings in that area, didn't they, Frank?
Oh yeah, well they built a prefab, and then there was one on the corner of Hart, and I'm forgetting the other street. And also their library was also on that corner. Mm-hmm. Hart and...
What's in there, Tracy and...
well, it was near Tracy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plant?
Plant, Hart and Plant, yeah.
The MVC, what became MVCC, where did they start, Frank?
Well, actually, they started at the old Country Day School in New Hartford, which is where the Wedgwood apartments are now. And they also rented an old mill on State Street. And then later it became Mohawk Valley Technical Institute, MVTI. And then they built the campus in Utica where it is today, and it became Mohawk Valley Community College.
Yeah.
But we were lucky. We had so much political clout in 45, 46. We had people like John Train from Utica Mutual, Richard Balch, the president of Horrocks Ibbotson, who were great Democrats. I mean, Richard Balch could pick up the phone and call President Harry Truman. He was chairman of the New York State Democratic Committee. John Train, big Republican, could pick up the phone and call Governor Dewey of the. So you had all this clout. And when the state decided to build these institutes of applied arts and sciences, they were going to build 5, I believe. New York City, Albany, Buffalo, White Plains, and Utica got it. And it grew into MVCC, you know, a great community college today.
And when you were mentioning those names of Train and Balch, would you put Rufy Elephant's name in there as well, Frank?
Well, not really. There was a group of, well, maybe you do have to put that. Richard Balch, there was a group of men who met at the Fort Schuyler Club at noon. There was a concern, the knitting mills were leaving. What were you going to, Utica had over 100,000 people. Where were they going to work? So this group got together and came up with a plan to attract industry. And they were successful. The first big one they got was Chicago Pneumatic. And Richard Balch, who was a big Democrat, he was part of that group. He wrote one time that every so often he would meet with Rufy Elephant, who was really, controlled the Democratic Party in the city, because he said you needed the help of the unions, you needed the help of the political party. So I guess you have to put Rufy's name in there too, yeah. Okay,
and it was another, shouldn't forget about this college, and that was the one that became SUNY. They were down in the old mill buildings on
the Globe Woolen Mill. Well, at first they were on Frankfurt, the West Frankfurt School on Ferguson Road, and then they moved to Globe. And really it was Senator James Donovan who really pushed for that, because the state kept promising that they were going to build an upper division college, which would be a, excuse me, a 3-year college for graduates of the community colleges. They would go 2 years to the community colleges, and then their 3rd and 4th year at the upper division, and then their 5th year get their master's degree. And the state kept promising, but it was really Jim Donovan who kept fighting for it and got it. Yep.
We promised to talk baseball, so we better talk some baseball, and we'll do that right after this. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Frank Tomaino is our guest. Frank is a columnist for the Observer-Dispatch, writes a history column for all these years. Frank, baseball. Yes, we're located close to Cooperstown, Hall of Fame, but even before that we had baseball here, going back right to the Utica Braves.
We had great baseball. We were talking about the Loom the Boom. Also in that era, 1945, 40, well, and In 1936, Utica got a professional baseball team, the Utica Braves. It was Class D, which was the lowest. At that time, you had AAA, AA, A, B, C, and D, so that was the lowest. But in 1942, the Rome Colonels were also in that league. In 1942, the Springfield Rifles of the International League bought the Utica Braves and moved them to Utica in 43 in the Eastern League, which was Class A, good ball. But Utica had a lousy team. Mm-hmm. It was during World War II. Most of the ball players were in the service. And the manager of the team was Wally Shang, who was a catcher on the 1927 New York Yankees, a backup catcher. Anyway, I think they won 35 games and lost like 110. But in 1944, the Philadelphia Phillies bought the team and began to put players on, good players on the team.
Wasn't Richie Ashburn on that team?
Richie Ashburn, he started as a catcher. He was, I was 17 years old or something like that, who, as you know, is now in the Hall of Fame. But when the Phillies bought the club, the season began. Then someone in the Philly front office said, why are we calling this team the Utica Braves? In the National League at that time, you had the Boston Braves, now the Atlanta Braves. So they said, people will think that Utica's the farm club of the Boston Braves. We got to change the name. Well, they had blue socks, so the Utica Braves became the Utica Blue Sox.
Because the uniforms already had the blue socks?
Yep, yep. And then in 45, they won the Eastern League pennant. You had, again, Richie Ashburn. And Richie Ashburn, I think he hit 320. He was just...
Was he in the outfield by then?
He was playing center field in 45. And they won the pennant. Eddie Sawyer, who was from Ithaca College, managed the team. They had a real good team. They had a shortstop, Bitsy Mott, who later became Elvis Presley's bodyguard.
Yeah.
I like that for useless trivia.
Well, you know what? You mentioned Bitsy Mott, and I wrote a column once about Elvis driving through Utica. Oh, yeah. I forget where he was going, but he was in his Cadillac.
Yeah.
And they stopped at the North Utica Diner late at night or early in the morning. And and I'm reading those old clippings from those days, and who was with him? Bitsy Mott.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, yeah.
Bitsy Mott, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, wait a minute. You know what? I think I got confused. I think when he got here, he wanted to call Bitsy Mott or something like that. But Bitsy Mott's name came up. I'll have to...
Well, he played shortstop, and they won the pennant in 45. In 47, they had a real good team. They won the pennant again. They won over 100 games. But Richie Ashburn played left field, and a player, Vance Dinges, played center field. But you had that team in 1947. In 48, 4 or 5 of them were playing in the major leagues with the Phillies, including the manager, Eddie Sawyer, went from managing Utica to managing the Phillies. You had Richie Ashburn, who hit 361 that year. You had Stan Lapata, who was a catcher for Utica, caught for the Phillies a long time. Granny Hamner was the shortstop, and Putzi Cavallero was the second baseman. They all went to the...
I'm sorry, Frank. Were those the what they called the Whiz Kids?
In 1950, they won the pennant and became the Whiz Kids. The Yankees beat them 4-0 in the World Series, but it was a great team. Again, Richie Ashburn, Lapata, all the ones I mentioned were on that Whiz Kid team.
Where did they play? They played at McConnell Field, right?
McConnell Field in North Utica, and which was, it was I guess it seated about 3,000. Everything was painted green. I went to 500 games there in my lifetime when I was a kid. And I remember when I delivered papers for the OD had a knothole club, paper boys, and once a year, from the OD, we would march up North Genesee Street to McConnell's Field, and they would put us in left field. There were some little bleachers. Yeah. And I think they bought us a bag of peanuts or something, and we watched the game. Yeah.
Let's be a little bit more precise on where it was. Was McConnell's, is it McConnell or McConnell's?
McConnell, C-O-N-N-E-L-L.
Was McConnell Field about where the Red Roof Inn is today, Frank?
Yeah, it was off Genesee Street. By the way, Mario Caldarelli has written a book about McConnell Field. I guess it's still available.
Yeah, I see it available over at Shenatries.
Shenatries and at the History Center.
Yeah.
But if the rear of Red Roof in the back, that would be like right field. Mm-hmm. But it was about 100 yards off Genesee Street. There were houses on Genesee Street. It was, it was a big field.
Dimension-wise, you mean?
Yeah, I think center field was 500 feet.
Nobody's going to hit that out of there.
Oh no, but and left field. At the beginning, left field was only a few feet from the barge canal, and I remember I went to a night game one time, where they actually had to call the game because there was a fog or something from the canal, and the left fielder disappeared, and they had to call the game.
What were the accommodations like